watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. Time now for the Kickstarter discussion. The Uganda Muslim Supreme Council on the verge of losing prime property. It is the latest in a series of scenarios that have pitted the Muslim community first against each other, but also against other stakeholders, like it is in this case a businessman. What we do have is what appears to many as a soap opera that has intrigue and a little bit of power struggles within it. Whether this particular one shall also unfold as the rest have done remains to be seen. But the contestation is about land and the fact that the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council is supposed to pay a debt of 19 billion Uganda shillings to one businessman, Justus Chabahwa, who claims land that he bought was encumbered and he was unable, alongside his Malaysian partners, to establish a meat processing firm. It meant they've lost money and are now seeking that the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council pays the debt that has accumulated in interest to a staggering 19 billion Uganda shillings rather. Okay, in studio this morning I have three people who are helping us find perspective but also excavate the truth. I have with me the spokesperson of the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, Ziwa Siraji, Ashraf Mavawala. Many thanks for joining us this morning. I've dealt very often with Mr. Chifampa. That is why my mind was getting right ahead of me. You're most welcome, spokesperson.
Thank you.
And of course, Siraji Chifampa, you are the spokesperson for Jamia Dawat Sarafia, that is headquartered in Nakasero. We are glad to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
I also have with me Mukasa Siraji Katantazi, the Chief Executive Officer at the Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association. Many thanks for making it.
My pleasure to be here.
Let's begin with the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. On Friday, events at the Gaddafi Mosque and indeed in many prayer places across the city were of tension and intrigue as many of the Muslim faithfuls began to internalize the latest controversy regarding land. What is the genesis of this whole saga?
Well, first of all, we thank you for hosting us, and
You're most welcome.
we thank Almighty God who has enabled us reach here, and we also thank him for the countless bounties bestowed on us, of which is life. First of all, we wish to tell our wider public that Uganda Muslim Supreme Council is safe and sound. It is operating normally, the offices are open, and we are moving on as we expected. Whatever is happening is not new. It has been there and will continue to be there, because conflicts are part of human living. You'll never say, you can't say that there will never be any time where there are no conflicts. Everywhere, be it families, be it institutions, be it whatever. But the best way, how do you manage the conflicts which always occur constantly? So Supreme Council is also passing through the same stages of development. And whatever happened on Friday, it was unfortunate, and which we can characterize as being indiscipline of highest order, because a place of worship, it has that which we could call as sacredness. But in case a Muslim who could,
there's a sanctified ground,
sanctified space for worshiping Almighty God. So in case a human being who claims to profess Islam, automatically, if you could come and violate that kind of sacredness, then you could automatically say there is a problem with him. And of course the situation was contained, and as we speak, he could be now being aligned before the courts of law for causing that kind of stampede, unnecessary stampede and panic among the worshippers. The the current situation, which you could describe as a transaction which didn't go well, goes back to the time. You see, that property is one of the so many properties which have been out of our control for a long time. We had several ranches, of which they were grabbed from us from right away from 1979, after the overthrow of the late President Idi Amin. So subsequently, it has been occupied by so many actors, including squatters and encroachers, until the gentleman in question approached us. Unfortunately, that is why the way you described it, that they moved to call it a comedy. The man himself doesn't appear. That's why he's not here. It is only others who are trying to speak on his behalf.
He's a businessman.
He's a businessman, but you could see it becomes a comedy for a person to come and jump over it, and then you see him speaking, he goes over the media, he speaks on his behalf as if he's the one who has been sent by the claimant, and yet we said, why are you here? This is not your problem.
So what are the facts?
The facts
that's what
is
we're interested in most importantly.
He came knowingly that he knew that the land was encumbered, it had encumbrances.
Okay.
And then it also had encroachers, but because he was interested to operate his business, then they said, let me come and give it to me.
So the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council knew that a buyer understands the encumbrances
He was
of
the
land,
one you knew.
but
because
also played along and sold this land after all.
He came knowingly. Being a businessman, no businessman of that magnitude can go and try to put his money where he has not tried to research about the property. So he went there, he researched about it, realized that all the encroachers who are there, they were not maybe bona fide occupants and whatever. That's why he said, I can go on, let's work out, I can purchase it. Then council accepted through its right mandated organs. Then
We're glad we have a lawyer in the house this morning, Mr. Mukasa Siraji Katantazi, Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association, listening to Mr. Mvawala. Mr. Mvawala has just shifted the blame and placed it on Mr. Chabahwa, the business person, for going ahead into a transaction that he understood was encumbered, and that it should not, as he sounds, be the problem of the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. What are the legal dynamics of land purchase?
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, I would like to make a disclaimer. I am not here in the official capacity of Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association.
Okay.
I am here to discuss the legal implications in my personal capacity.
As a lawyer?
As a lawyer.
All right. Thank you
because this information,
thank you for
this
that clarification.
This invite was given to me without being told that I would be speaking on behalf of Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association.
Okay.
Based on the fact that Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association has commissioned a 5-man committee to interrogate this transaction and look at the legal implications and come out with a legal opinion about the judgment. It is quite interesting, this whole saga, the way it has unfolded. Mr. Zua alludes to the fact that Mr. Chabahwa, while entering this transaction, knew quite well that the land was encumbered. In fact, I have with me the agreement, and I would like to read
the agreement at the point of sale.
Yes, the agreement at the point of sale, because these are factual matters, and we need to share them.
Do quickly share the
under
facts.
Under clause 6, 6.21, warranties and representation, it was stated that the vendor further warrants and undertakes that within a period of 60 days from the date of execution, hereof, remove of the caveat filed on the title to the property by MS Enterprise Handling Services Limited. So right from the onset, even when they were drafting the agreement, it was clear to the purchaser that the land was encumbered. That notwithstanding, there are other clauses which need to be interrogated. Clearly, the controversial issue was, how did 3.584 billion rise to 18 plus billion in that space? And we need to go back again to the agreement and see the clause that had interest in it. The transfer of titles and completion, the agreement stated under clause 5.1 that upon execution hereof and payment of the full purchase price, which it is undisputed, was paid from the purchaser's bank account to the vendor's bank account in Diamond Trust. This money was transferred. 1, the vendor shall hand over the certificate of title, the transfer instruments, the vendor's resolution to sell the property, the national identity cards of the vendor's signatories, passport size photos of the vendor's signatories, the vendor's constitution, the vendor's certificate of incorporation, and so on and so forth. But then there is a clause that says that if the vendor failed to fulfill all these within a period of 150 days from the date of execution, for any reason not being the default of the purchaser, then the vendor shall refund all the sums that have been paid at the time, together with interest of 12% per month from the date of execution. Interest at 12% from now. That is where I think the legal dynamics should be. If you take 12% and multiply it by the purchase price of 3.584 billion, it comes to roughly 430 million shillings per month.
Per month. And how many months have gone since the purchase was?
This agreement was made in 2020, on the 24th of June 2020. So you simply stated it is over 3 years since the agreement was made. So in just a space of 8 months, this money should have doubled. Just 8 months. Now multiply by the number of months, because in a year there are 12 months. So in 3 years we have 36 months, and you can do the calculations and see how this money rises. So what is not in dispute is that the agreement was executed. What is not in dispute is also that the purchaser knew that the land was encumbered. What is not in dispute is that the agreement specifically states that failure to do the things that were agreed, the money should be refunded, plus 12% interest per month. So the question would be, once it was realized by the vendors that it was impractical for them to execute fully as agreed in the sale agreement, what did they do? Because the clause was specific. Failure to deliver on your part, refund the money. And at that point, if it was refunded at the point when they failed, after 150 days, it would imply that they only needed to pay back exactly the amount that they had received.
Good. I beg your indulgence, Mr. Siraja Chifamba. Let me just go back to the spokesperson of the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. You've had the submission from Mr. Katantazi. Why didn't you meet your part of the bargain when you had the chance to?
Well, I'll not indulge much in exactly what happened, because...
Why wouldn't you?
Because first of all, we appealed against the ruling. As you know, he knows that is his field.
The question was not at the point of the ruling.
That is, I'm coming to that, because the facts are there that after the he reached that point that he couldn't take possession of the property. He came back and returned he returned back to the council, and the council accepted to pay him back. Actually, we had even tried to execute that kind of arrangement whereby we could even pay him half of the money. He refused. Then he rushed to court. That's why we started to challenge what was his motive. You see, that is the case. We quickly, the way it was handled in court was on supersonic speed. Immediately, it was heard, passed, and then reached where it has gone. What
was the encumbrance to paying the total amount as stated in the agreement in case your part of the bargain had failed to be met?
That is why we had, of course, we had to sit as we had done before to negotiate the mechanism on how we can pay him back. But he totally denied them, he refused them, he rushed to court. That in that scenario, we were not given chance to explore all the avenues of how to pay him back.
We don't have any representative from the other party, but we shall use the knowledge of existing agreements and perspective from Mr. Katantazi, given the fact that you have this on the tip of your fingers. But Mr. Chifampa, listening to all that is happening in light of Friday's events and the latest controversy regarding land and then the conflict within the Muslim fraternity, what do you make of it?
First of all, I also want to thank you for hosting me. I wanted the spokesperson, first of all, to bring us the genesis of this. But unfortunately, he only focused on what ensued on Friday and going forward. But let me go back a little bit. The issue of Muslim properties and the sale of Muslim properties has always been here. And the properties were given to us by the Asian community that was expelled in 1972. Others were bought and given to us by the late President Idi Amin Dada. Then the subsequent leadership that came after President Amin's overthrow had challenges of managing these properties. And in 2000, I think, that was 2001, when Mufti Mbaje came into office, because we had issues with Sheikh Saadi Ruwemba, when this government said that there were supposed to be a return of properties of the Asians, and Sheikh Saadi Ruwemba signed off so many properties that went back to the Asians. Now he died, and Sheikh Muhammad Semakula was the interim leader. What he used to do was to move with a bag that contained all the titles that he had in his possession. Even at the time of swearing in of Mufti Mbaje, he handed him over the bag that contained all the titles that he had in his office. Now, by the time of Sheikh Mbaje coming into office, very many Muslims were very hopeful for change in the leadership at the Uganda Muslim Council. Why? Because there had been a notion that had been put in place that majority of the people that were at the headquarters were only one-sided, that they had studied only the theological part of it. So we needed someone who had also studied both secular and the theological part of it. Now Mr. Sheikh Mbaje comes in, but I'm telling you to this day, Sheikh Mbaje has been a total disappointment to so many Muslims in Uganda, because we hoped that for him coming in as someone who has studied both sides, he's going to develop the properties that he found in place to generate income that is going to run the institution. But unfortunately, he also did what his predecessors did. What did he do? To look for properties to sell off. Now when it comes to issue of Sembabuli, this has been there for over 3 years. First of all, there has been a number of cases that have been running in court over the same. And I'm telling you, there are other sale agreements that we have in our possession of Arthur Kayanja that was also sold the same land. Now what happened in Sembabuli? There is this 2 square mile land. It had been encroached upon. There had been squatters on it. Now the district leadership in Masaka goes into a lease agreement with Mr. Muganga to go and remove the squatters on the land, surveys the land, puts validums on the land, and be given, in return, be given 15 years of lease on that piece of land. Now, Supreme Council hears of what is happening on ground. It jumps onto the bandwagon and says that the lease that has been given to him, they will not consider it, not until it comes to Supreme Council. Supreme Council by then did not have the title. The Mufti declares that if you don't bring the title here, we are going to make a special title and declare that that title, that you have the original one, got lost. Now they bring the title to him. We have agreements, I'm telling you. We have where the squatters that had been on that land were compensated. They signed consent of being compensated. They were evacuated and removed on the land. Now, Mr. Muganga operates the land. 7 years down the road, Supreme Council sells the land to someone else. Now, knowing that Mr. Muganga is on the land, so he says that for me, I have to first finish the remaining 8 years on my lease agreement. Now, they failed to remove Mr. Muganga, and the man, as you've heard, that's where the controversy comes from, and we see the attachment, and there's so many things that is the history. Now, what happens right now is that, unfortunately, we've known about the court ruling or the attachment that was passed by the court, and Supreme Council still says that this is comedy. Very unfortunate. Muslims have lost so many properties. A lot of, William Street Pro 30 was sold off by Uganda Muslim Council, and they said that for them they had not sold off the property. Courts of law ruled that the property had been sold off, and the president came in and intervened to rescue the property. You understand? Now today you're coming out to say that this is comedy. Now, if courts of law are playing comedy, then which institution in Uganda are you going to respect? Because courts of law have declared themselves. Sheikh Mubaji.
No, he effectively says that the judiciary is corrupt and that the poor won't seem to have justice. This time round, depicting the Supreme Council and those that are fighting against this particular businessman as the poor and the businessman, the rich, who, according to him, is able to perhaps pay off the judges.
Now that's a contradiction. If you say that the judiciary is corrupt, that the poor cannot get justice from the courts of law, and that's why you're running for appeal, then we fail to understand. If the system is corrupt and you know that you're not going to get justice from there, why then do you appeal the judgments of that system, that corrupt system? So I think Mufti Mbaji is playing to the gallery. And as you hear, we've seen so many scandals that have been there. One time, the headquarter was locked through a court judgment, not until it was rescued. Sheikh Mubaji is the first Mufti in history to stand in the dock as a result of Muslim properties. And this is one of the so many. If someone told you there's so many properties that Muslims had by the time of the overthrow of Idi Amin Dada, and what they are remaining with today, and what has been lost in the last 20 years of Sheikh Mubaji, you'll be amazed.
Interesting submission there, but let me just return for a bit of clarity on this particular transaction and the modalities of repayment. You've spoken about the motives of the other party and why he appeared, or his representatives appeared to want to stampede the Muslim Supreme Council into paying back the money in light of failure to meet its part of the bargain. When we did the calculation here, it came to, according to my calculation, 400 million, 430 per month, and for 3 years, that's about 14 billion. And the claimant wants 19, so there is a bit of...
No, you have to look at the whole period, because what does the agreement say from the date of execution?
The date of execution.
Yes.
All right. So, ideally right now, the Supreme Council understands that it has a date to pay, or it needs to be able to clear off this controversy by paying back Mr. Chabahwa the money that he wants. You claim you want to, but his motive is also suspect. You've chosen to play the aspect of what his motive is, and you have not given attention to the fact that you have an obligation to undertake. Why is that so?
First of all, we thank you for giving us that opportunity to explain our side of the story. That is why we are trying to explore what exactly does he want. Because
no, he wants his money back.
No, it seems he has indulged himself into Muslim politics, the way my brother was explaining. You've introduced him as being the spokesperson of which institution? He's representing which institution?
Mr. Chifampa.
Mr. Chifampa.
Mr. Chifampa is from the Jamia Dawat Sarafia.
Don't you see? We are talking about Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. He has never served in any of our organs. Neither is seen in the system of our structures. Now he's speaking about an institution which is purely, totally different from his. He's totally is different entity. For us, we don't indulge in their operations.
Okay, there is something you're introducing that I'm not going to allow us to go into.
That is what. Why let us
let's leave
stick ourselves.
Casero and all the Kampala.
Allow me to reply whatever he was saying.
Yeah,
he was telling lies and misleading the public.
Before
he wanted to speak about politics.
Okay, before you respond to the lies and him apparently playing to the gallery too, first clear the air on this particular money that is wanted by the business.
That is why for us, as we've heard from our national leaders, recently our national chairperson, that is Dr. Muhammad Lubega, addressed the media. He told them, he announced over the media all over that Uganda Supreme Council knows the debt, is ready to pay, and we've invited Chabawa to come back so that we could see the modalities of how to pay him back. Yeah, that is it. And even moved yesterday when he described when he was installing the district house of Kayunga. Again, he echoed the same message that come back and we pay you. Supreme Council, this is a mighty institution which belongs to Muslims. We have the capacity to pay you.
Let me get legal perspective on that. Has there been targeted communication to the other party about the fact that the Supreme Council is ready to pay this money, but only wants to do it in perhaps a manner that may not be agreeable to the businessman, and that's why they are seeking negotiation?
I want to start from what you commented earlier. I'm an officer of courts, so I take issue when somebody states that courts are corrupt without adducing any evidence. I also took particular interest last night when I got this invitation to reread the judgment. What is not disputed is that court has pronounced itself. And the fact that I was trying to bring out the figures for people to appreciate, apparently we are only focusing on the 18.9 that was the principal and the interest. But there were also costs, so the total amount to be paid back is 19.2 billion, 0.22 billion. So it is higher than the 18.99 that they claimed from the principal and the interest. That said, I don't want to get involved in the political disagreements. But Mr. Chifampa is giving a historical perspective, but he has not adduced evidence as to whether these agreements are available or not. But it has been alleged. And when I was reading this agreement to you, I showed you that there was another lease by NHAS. So the vendor knew that the land was encumbered. My take on that one is twofold. The first one...
Quickly, we have to go for a break.
Yes. The first one is, you see, courts dispense justice. And when you look at the national objectives of the Constitution of Uganda, there is an element of social and economic consideration
in the dispensation of justice.
So my first question would be, how fair is interest at 12% on an agreement per month? Because it translates into 144% per year. So even if we were to agree that yes, they had to pay interest, but the question is, was it fair? What loss had been occasioned to Chabahwa for him to claim that amount to that tune? That is one. The second one, when you look at the warrant of attachment, because these to me are the principal things that we should be discussing. The other issue I have is the over-attachment. I am a lawyer. I have conducted transactions within the center of Kampala Business District. And people buy plots of 50 by 50 in what is considered to be prime area.
Prime area.
At 7 billion, 50 by 50 feet. When you look at the expanse that old Kampala is alone, it is on acres. I don't have the exact acreage, but it's a big chunk of land.
It's a huge chunk of land.
It's a huge chunk of land in a prime location. There is a principle of excessive or over-attachment. So if you are touching old Kampala and you are touching other properties of the Muslims, even from a jurisprudential perspective, I don't want to critique the judgment at this point, but you see, there is what the law is, but jurisprudence is the interpretation or the rationale behind the judgment.
Counsel Katantazi, you've just thrown the spanner into the works by saying that there was a sense of unfairness in the judge attaching.
It is not the judge who attached. This was by the registrar. The judge makes the ruling.
He makes the ruling.
Yes.
We cannot assume, or rather say, that the judge makes a ruling in ignorance of what the registrar has suggested. Are you saying at any one point in time a judge can rule without knowing the extent and the modalities of the detail of what he's ruling on?
What the law requires is that once a ruling or a judgment is made, then execution takes place.
Okay.
Now, execution is a different procedure altogether.
All right.
And that one is before the registrar.
Gentlemen, let's go for a break. When we return, we shall be excavating further what now appears to be a lot more twists in this particular controversy regarding the debt that is owed one businessman by the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. We shall be back. Do stay with us.
You're watching Morning at NTV. Watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. We are discussing the latest controversy regarding Muslim property that has seen the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council pitted against one businessman, Justice Chabahwa, following a court ruling that indicated, or rather slapped down the fact that the council owed to pay the businessman a staggering 19 billion Uganda shillings. The Supreme Council claims that it has offered to pay the money, but sought negotiation on the modalities and the pace of that particular payment. We shall be getting some clarity on that again, but let's first listen in to the Mufti of Uganda, Sheikh Shaban Ramadan Mabaje, speaking on Saturday at the installation of the district Kadi in Zimbabwe.
Allah or reveal any matter to any person which shall be brought to my knowledge.
This boy was dropped under qualification to be a member of the executive committee under the new constitution. He must possess a bachelor's degree in any field. He doesn't possess it.
If the qualifications leave you out, is it Mbaje's problem? The problem has arisen because the judiciary has a problem. Please tell the president that without money, it's hard to win a case in courts. Caution the judges who think that becoming a judge is a place to get money from people. The person who was threatening my life was smuggled into the mosque by police.
People should desist from fighting. That was an issue of the past.
Those events in Zimbabwe on Saturday, where the Mufti where the Mufti was speaking, and he gave what appears to be very directed statements to individuals within the Muslim fraternity that he claims are fighting him and his leadership. That has been a claim that has been on for the last 20 years and represents where Muslim wrangles, especially in terms of leadership, he also makes an accusation against the police for smuggling an individual into the mosque who apparently triggered the mayhem, but also lashes out at the judiciary for corruption, and that some judges apparently think getting into these positions is for becoming better or richer. Those are allegations that, of course, the Mufti was unable to substantiate. We are also unable at this particular moment in time to verify any of those claims. Let me return to my guests in studio and go straight to Mr. Chifampa. You spoke very extensively about the status of Muslim property, but also offered us a history of how we slid as a nation into this particular Muslim property malaise. When it has come to resolution of conflicts arising from ownership or alleged fraudulent sale of Muslim property, what has been done? What are those, what I can call key transactions that have been undertaken that we know of or you know of, can adduce evidence to us? How have they been resolved, and is this representative of that particular way of doing things?
Okay, before that,
yeah.
One, I've heard Council Siraji Katanta saying that there are issues that can be looked at in that judgment. The 12% interest per month. You question what has Mr. Arthur Jabakwa lost to deserve all that money and so many other things. But also on the other side as well, we need to caution our leaders that before you append your signature on an agreement of the sort, what you've read through, are you aware of the ramification or the implications of that agreement, that in case
things don't
go the way you anticipated them to?
Yeah.
So that is one. Secondly, his former president, the late Lubega Abdul Hakim, had filed a similar case against the sale of that property in Zimbabwe. In the court in Masaka, I think he's very much aware of that.
That's right.
So I've just shared with him another agreement, a sales agreement with another person called Arthur Kayanja, where the Mufti
on this very piece of land.
Of this very piece of land, where the leadership has also sold it to another person and they have appended their signatures. So I think the leaders at the Uganda Muslim Council have also a responsibility to look into their actions. We've had similar cases where properties have gone. The houses in the staff quarters in Najana and Kombi, where people went to banks borrowed money and failed to pay that money. So they had put the houses as the security, so they had to go. If the Mufti and the leadership at Uganda Muslim Council is saying that they have the 19 billion shillings and they are willing to pay, then we shall say Alhamdulillah. Why? Because what we hear is that they might scrap off the Supreme Council headquarters, because as he has said, when you look at the value of the property, itself, and even what is on the properties that was on that piece of land, you can't value them at 6 billion shillings. maybe that one can be agreed that they can be removed.
Let's clear that by asking this simple question. The properties that are being attached, were they presented as collateral, as security in the transaction? If some of those are not on, then perhaps the aspect of unfairness on the part of availing very expensive land can come into play.
If I may, you see, when you go to court, at that point you do not determine the mode of execution. There are a number of different modes of execution. Attachment is one of them. But execution is a process where a judgment data acquires the advantage of ruling in his favor. So he will take the legal procedures to make sure that the ruling, and he gets the fruits of this judgment or ruling. So you can choose, because there is no particular order, you can choose which mode of execution you want to pursue.
Okay, I'm just understanding, which of course was a lapse on my part, that this particularly had no original attachment of property.
No, it wasn't a collateral.
It wasn't a collateral. Of course, now that is clear. So it's a case of the judge and or the court. Let me say the court.
It is actually the case of the applicant, which mode he wants to pursue.
Interesting.
Yes, because the law states about 5 or 6 modes.
Just finalize your submission.
So I was saying that I had the chairman of the Uganda Muslim Council addressing the media, and in his submission he said that they had tried to even invite Mr. Chabahwa to see how they can pay back that money, because they say we do not deny that we went into an agreement with him or a transaction with him.
That's right.
But we had even proposed to pay him at first 1.5 billion shillings. But he refused, and he had been swayed away by other people who had vested interest in the sagas here, and they advised him to go to court. If the Mufti comes out now and says that we can pay the 19 billion shillings and we don't need any assistance from any person, people going around saying that we should raise the money are also playing comedy, then we say alhamdulillah, because all Muslims want to hear is that their properties are safe. None of their property is going to be lost as a result of poor judgment in terms of making agreements and whatever, because that's what the Muslims want to see, because they've lost a lot. I'm telling you, if you looked at the list of properties that were left with the Uganda Muslim Council and what we have today, every region of this country is crying foul as loss of land, loss of property. The Qadis in the areas are selling, the leaders there are selling properties. So if he can guarantee us that just give me a month, we are going to pay the 19 billion shillings, then we shall also celebrate.
Talking of guarantees of payment, I was watching the news, and not the news, but I was online, and there's a gentleman whose name I don't know, who pledged, you give him 2 weeks, and then he... Haj Masimbi pledged, he said 2 weeks, he will be able to galvanize 19 billion Uganda shillings. Have you taken on this offer?
That is part of the drama which we've been talking about. Those guys, they've been fighting Uganda Muslim Supreme Council for a long time.
Okay.
So Supreme Council has been there without them. And we've been surviving. Whenever you hear them speaking, they are totally speaking of politics, the way my brother was saying. He has raised one of the agreements which showing that we had already sold the property of a certain name. Ask him to bring that person. He's not there. They've played that kind of politics for a longer time. They want to smear the image of the Mufti and the Supreme Council in bad image so that people could hate it. Their aim is only to make people, Muslims, hate their leaders. That's why he doesn't have any trust in the leadership. Every person is a thief. Every person is bad. Whatever is doing bad. That is what they always do. They preach hatred only.
Very quickly, before we slide into where I don't want us to go, the Muslim Supreme Council over the last 2 decades has found itself in a spot of bother. The criticism is immense when it comes to sale of Muslim property, something that is not deniable because reports have come through across the country on very controversial pieces of land. What is being done to rectify this one very quickly?
We have a constitution. That is why we amended our constitution. It had loopholes in the past. We have made it now. Actually, we were hoped by the
Muslim Lawyers Association.
Muslim Lawyers Association. They've helped us a lot in redrafting and
when was that amendment done?
That was 2022.
2022.
Yeah,
okay, that's pretty new.
So they had put in place other robust systems to how to guard and to manage the properties of the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. And actually, which I want to share with the public, that we have organs. It is not like the association maybe is using the experience of the association, whereby
from
they have their only one
association.
big cult head. For us, that is not how we operate. We have organizations, we have organs of the council, whereby it is popularly elected with the popularly elected members. We elect right from the grassroots up to the national level.
Thank you very much. In a minute, Mr. Chifampa, what are the resolutions that have been reached to harmonize sale and transactions of property within your Jamia Lawat Sarafia?
Of course, for us, we have no record of any property that has been lost.
You have records of controversy.
Oh, controversies on land?
And that means that records and...
no, there is nobody, no one can come and say that Jamia Dar Salafia was given this property or bought this property of land and he sold it off fraudulently or to any other person, like we've already cited. Anyway, the other thing is that I don't know what he considers fighting Uganda Muslim Council, but criticism is always fighting them, and they do not want to accept.
They physically fought it. They physically attacked it.
Let him submit.
I don't want
to
go into that because there are so many examples that we can.
We
do not want to cite and go into that because that will sound to be petty. But however, I think it's high time leadership at Uganda Muslim Council thinks about the future of the Muslims in Uganda. Because how do you even come to the decision of selling land when land has become so precious? Every other day...
we discuss that kind of an idea on this platform? This is not the right platform to discuss that.
Let him finalize and be...
Every other day, people are fighting for land. For you, the little you have, you're just disposing it off and selling it off. So I think we should think about the generations that are going to come in future. Which kind of history do you want them to talk about us with the people in leadership?
Okay.
So I pray that the leadership wakes up and thinks about the future generation and protects the Muslim property other than selling it off.
Mr. Katantazi, you're up.
Thank you very much. It's quite interesting when people get into Islamic political fights, especially from different sectors. And it is a zero-sum game. It doesn't really take us very far because that is not why we're here today. I want to keep my submission within the confines of the reason we came today. First of all, the Mufti is on record, as you've shown on your clip, saying that they do not need help from anybody. They have the money to pay off the 19.2 billion.
Okay.
So we do not have to sweat much about that one. We have been given assurances.
Me, if I were in trouble and somebody offered, I would go to them and be like,
I'm coming to that. But we must also be appreciative of the fact that this is not personal money. If Uganda Muslim Supreme Council has the 19.2 billion and it is paid off, it is still money that belongs to the Muslim community. Now, if you get somebody who offers to pay all of it or part of it, I think naturally one would be pleased. You put them to task to make good on their promise.
That is right.
Now, whether it is comedy or otherwise, as alluded to by Mr. Zua, is another matter. But to me, the prudent approach and pragmatic one that I would take is to put them to task.
And put them to task.
Put the money on the table, because this is... I also want to state that the leadership at Uganda Muslim Supreme Council holds these properties in trust for the community. It does not give them a carte blanche to do and deal with these properties as they please. It does not. Whether it is property held by Jamiat Dawat al-Salafiyya, property held by Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, property held by the Office of the Supreme Mufti, on behalf of the Muslims, they hold these properties in trust. And my question at that point would be, one, why was it a sale and not a lease? Because a lease retains your proprietary interest. It only runs for a period of time. When this period of time, it reverts. So one would wonder, why did they enter into a sale and not a lease? That is one. The second one that I would also want to pose, there is a clause that if they fail in 150 days to pay back, these are 5 months, 3.5 billion. You would even hold this money on account for that period to make sure that if the deal doesn't go through, we can give back the money. Mr. Zua has also stated, and is on record here, that they called Mr. Chabahwa to pay back this money. In the judgment, they were raising an issue as to the confusion on who to pay. If it were within my power, if I was their lawyer, I would have simply told them, return the money to the account that this money was obtained from.
Thank you very much. Mukasa Siraji Katantezi, lawyer with the Uganda Muslim Lawyers Association. Many thanks for the perspective, and many thanks to you too. Siraji Chifampa, spokesperson of Jamia Dawat Salafiyya from Nakasero, and of course the spokesperson of the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, Zua Ashraf Muvala. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we are emboldened by your perspective in understanding this particular controversy regarding the land in which the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council finds itself on the wrong end yet again. That will do it for our Kickstarter discussion, but do stay with us. We shall be coming back with a look at how the National Social Security Fund is upgrading its web-based whistleblower portal. We'll be back after the break.